What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are, May 17th, the middle of the month. We're going straight into kind of the tail end of the pause that's going to be made in the leagues and the tournaments. Obviously, we still have the Apertura race to be decided in Paraguay. We're going to talk about who's still in the race after a big Superclasico that happened over the weekend. We'll talk about how our Paraguayan teams are going in the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana as we decide who's in, who's still with a chance, and who's out, right into the final day. And also what's been going on with our Paraguayans abroad, because aside from all the rumors of players possibly on the move, there is one player that is doing well abroad that definitely needs to be given a mention, especially here playing in the United States. We'll talk about who in a second, but let's go to Fede here, who, obviously for a country that is so accustomed to being so hot and humid, you're right there in your hoodie. You're right there all bundled up. It's getting cold right there in Paraguay at the minute, isn't it, Fede?
Yes, it is, Roberto. It's been pretty cold this last couple of days. It's been really cold this last week, and it's been rainy and cold. So it's not the kind of mix I like, especially. I'll stay here at home, watch a couple of games from here, especially with our Paraguayan teams in Libertadores, Cerro and Libertad playing away games this week. We didn't have any huge games, even though we did have the Super Classico. To be honest, which was a huge turnout. I was really happy to see that. So many people in the stands, even though it was a rainy day, that one also. But we definitely got to talk about that. What happened in the Super Classico? Glad to see that one of us at least got our predictions right. We said it last week. It was going to be one of us, and it was Ralph Hanno just once more. I think we got to do a count this year eventually, Roberto, in who picked better. And I do think it's Ralph. He usually gets it right. We were wrong again. Olimpia had it there for a moment, but it was Cerro coming back in the second half and getting a tie. Not a good tie for any of these two teams because Libertad picked up their points and they're in the first spot again. They are the one that the team that depends on themselves. Definitely look at what's going on in Sudamericana. Also, I can't believe Ameliano is the only team that looks like they're going to do something in this continental stage, even though Libertad might also end up in this competition. We'll see what happens with Cerro Porteño as they lock themselves against Colo Colo in what looks like a final brawl and a tremendous game. I'm also looking forward to. We got plenty to talk about. Besides everything that happened in the local league and in the continental stage, I would also mention that for the first time this whole season in the Premier League, we finally got to see the three Paraguayans in the same week playing. Well, two of them were playing actually against each other, even though they weren't at the same time in the pitch, which was Miguel Almiron and Julian Ciso Brighton playing against Newcastle. But we did get to see for the first time Enzo Gonzalez getting some playing minutes, and it's really good for him, especially if they're going to keep him on that team for next season. That's something that I want to know if Wolves are going to keep him, if they're going to let him go. That's one of the many things that will be talked about this off season, obviously in the Premier League. But it's great to see all three of them getting some action right before the Copa America. Also, Roberto Rapp, it's great to see you guys.
And it could be more. It could be more. We've been seeing some rumors here and there in the last few weeks and days of possibly more Paraguayans. We're probably going to get into that in a future episode because we don't want to obviously ruin all the stuff that's going on right now, but that could be the case as well. But going to Ralph as well, yeah, a big day, of course, for Paraguayan men's football in the way of three Paraguayans playing. First time, I think, in 14 years that we saw that. But also in the women's game. We have to mention the women's game because it's been a big week, or at least the last few big weeks for women's football from a Paraguayan perspective, from a South American perspective, and also from a youth perspective as well, if you wanted to give an update of what's going on.
Yeah, hi Roberto, hi Fede, hi everybody watching, listening. It's been, well, the FIFA Congress is going on right now, and so there's been a few announcements which I think will hopefully help Paraguay in the women's game. So firstly, the big news that the World Cup's going to be in Brazil, right, in 2027. And the whole of South America was pushing for that because you get that extra spot in the World Cup. And remember, Paraguay was so close to getting there last time, the senior team. So everybody's happy about that. I saw this week Jessica Martinez, Veronica Riveros, they were giving like videos to CONMEBOL supporting the bid. So everybody's very happy from that side. Then we had the news the day before that the Under-17s World Cup, both men and women's, is now going to be an annual tournament. So they've changed the format there. And in the women's tournament, it's going to be in Morocco, and it's going to be these 5 straight years in Morocco, and then that's also slightly expanded. So remember, the girls just missed out this year on going to the World Cup, so now they hopefully have a better chance for that. But the people that are actually going to the World Cup in the current format are the under-20s, right? So we're led by Fabio Fukumoto, the coach. He's from Brazil. He's come in. He's done a really good job there, and then led by 2 more Brazilian-based players, really, Fatima Acosta, who's been playing in Sao Paulo, and Adriana Martinez, who's over there in Brazil as well. So they have kind of guided that team to the World Cup that's going to be in Colombia this year, and they just did such a good job. We were following them throughout the tournament, but I don't think we've given them their congratulations for making it that far. And so we're really looking forward to how those girls can do later in the year, because that tournament's coming up very soon.
Yep, tournament in September. Obviously, Paraguay are back in a tournament for the first time in 2008 since 2018. So obviously, we'll keep an eye on that. And a lot of stuff going on in international football. Obviously, Copa America is about to start soon. The Olympics are about to start soon as well. We still need to figure out which players are going to go. There's still that debate, but that will come. That will come eventually. You know, we still have time. We still have to focus on the league action, but before getting all straight into what will be nonstop football from a national team perspective, guys. So really looking forward to that. But let's go into what we saw on the weekend. We saw over there in La Nueva Olla, another Superclasico being played over there between Olimpia and Cerro Porteño. A big game for both these 2 teams, because obviously the result of this match, as Fede had alluded, would have depended really much so on how they could fare in the Apertura race. Cerro Porteño was in a good spot because of how they beat Libertad last week. And obviously, Olimpia are also in that race as well. So it kind of favored both teams that if they were able to get maximum points, that they would be able to help out and be in a good spot to possibly win this one. And unfortunately for Fede or my sake, it didn't go our way in predictions. So Mystic Ralph, our bookie right here, definitely got his prediction right. A 1-1 draw to be exact, because we saw Olimpia take the lead first on right before halftime from Lucas Prato. And then right into the second half, a couple minutes in, it was Cecilia Dominguez that got the goal in the 51st minute, and that was enough. There were some controversial calls. There were some calls for possibly penalties on both ends as well, mainly for Cerro Porteño. It didn't go their way, but they settled for a point. And as Fede had mentioned, yeah, Libertad did get their win over Sudamérica on the weekend as well. So that means Libertad are going back into first place, 2 points from Cerro Porteño in 33, Olimpia chasing them in third place with 29 points. So, Rob, I want to go to you on this one first, because I think it was a result, obviously, that you got right. But ultimately, I think, as another draw, 6 straight draws in a Superclasico in all competitions. And I think it would favor as if Libertad are the big winners in this one, because I think for Cerro Porteño's case, they knew that they needed to win this one to be in this race. And they blew it, especially in the way that they were kind of chasing the game in with Prato getting the goal beforehand. And yeah, I think there is a bit of a sour taste, you would say, from Cerro fans, more so than Olimpia fans, coming from this Superclásico.
Yeah, I think so. And with Cerro being at home as well, right? So they're at home. There were lots of people. That the pitch looked better than we thought. I think we were worried about the quality of the pitch, and then it started raining so much. There's been so much rain in Paraguay this year, but that seemed to hold up. We didn't really have a problem with the spectacle. I think where Cerro will be disappointed is just the way they conceded that goal to Lucas Prato, because I remember as the game set up, it was very much Cerro in possession, looking to break down Olimpia. They were playing quite attacking, and Olimpia had set up in this a strange way of Prato and Barca Hook, who are 2 9s, but they're not particularly quick. And so there was this feeling that, well, if Olimpia is going to be very direct on the break, wouldn't it have been better to have somebody like Delis Gonzalez, who was sitting on the bench, somebody with a bit more pace? And then, of course, Lucas Prato proves me wrong, because he might not be the quickest player, but he's a very intelligent player, and he breaks the offside trap. I think it was behind Bias, right? Not Brock. But either way, both of Cerro's defenders, Bias and Brock, are quite slow, which we talked about in the previous episode. And so he's broken that, and it still needs a really good finish. I mean, I think Jean has come out a bit too far. If you remember, like Jean is just outside his box, and he suddenly realizes, oh, I can't touch this with my hands. But anyway, it still needs a really good finish to lob it over the keeper, and that's kind of what they brought Prato in for. He has that ability and that experience, and that really turned, I think, that really turned the game in the sense that no one really thought Olympia was going to take the lead from the way they were playing. And Cerro had a lot of work to do. But where Cerro, I think, really responded well is that they got the equalizer. I think it's like 5 minutes after halftime through Cecilio. And again, it's like it was Cecilio and Aguayo started and Iturbe. They were playing some of that attacking football that was really making it hard for Olympia. So I think in this game, it's interesting. It was only 1-1, but you could see like both times the defenses were maybe having to do a lot of work. And so it maybe could have ended up even a higher scoring draw, but I always knew it was going to be a tie because, as we were saying, these teams, they just keep drawing the games.
Yeah, it's been tie after tie, right? And I'm kind of getting frustrated with this situation, guys. I wanted to see somebody win this one, especially because how important it was and because he had Libertad already getting a huge result against Sudamerica, pretty much stomping on this team and showing that, it didn't affect them at all losing to Cerro Porteño, even though they made a couple of changes in their team for that rotation that these teams that are playing the double competition, they really need. And I think that was the big or the key, the big problem for Cerro in the Superclasico. They didn't have enough power in the second half when the match got away from them and when they needed to turn it around. And especially having a team that was on the counter attack pretty much 90 minutes. Olimpia understood their limitations. Palermo knows his squad a lot better now. This was his second Superclasico. He's been in the Paraguayan league a little bit longer now, so he knew what he was going up against. Also, he's seen this Cerro Porteño from Manolo Jimenez that doesn't change his style that much. That he's always playing with the same tactical setup, and his team is pretty much always the same. He's not changing that many players either. So Palermo knew what he was going to face, and Olimpia loves playing in that stadium. They feel so comfortable putting the pressure on the home team. They've done it so many times. That's why Cerro, ever since they've had this new stadium, they haven't been able to win. They haven't been able to get important results against Olimpia. And this is something that it's kind of a bargain also for the fans, that they thought that after what they showed against Libertad, they had enough to give a big blow against this Olympia team. And it was Lucas Prato, probably one of the oldest players on the pitch, scoring that first goal. And I think it was a goal that Prato also needed, guys, because he hadn't showed up these last couple of games. There was some criticism around him. Breda had scored on the game before, so there was even talk before the game that, no, it should probably be Breda coming in the team, or even Derlis Gonzalez, who hasn't looked 100%, but he probably has contributed a little bit more than Lucas Prato in these last couple of games. But Prato has scored in Libertadores finals. He showed up in big games along his career, so it wasn't anything new to see him score a goal like this. And maybe this gives him the opportunity to move forward with this team also, because he's a very experienced player, and you don't know what's going to happen with certain guys in this Olympia squad. Olympia cannot hire players until the end of the year, until the end of the season. So Palermo needs to get the best out of every single player and even get some players back. There's talks that eventually they will have certain injured players that haven't been available pretty much all season long, like Brian Montenegro, Richard Ortiz. They will have them for the second part of the year, but they need him because Olympia hasn't had enough to really play to its full capacity. And just like Roberto was mentioning, I do think this was Cerro Porteño's probably big chance of moving forward and putting the pressure on Libertad, winning a big game. Olympia still has to play against Libertad, so maybe El Gumarelo can let go of certain points still on the way. They got to play against Nacional, which is a team that also tied against them on the first round of games. So there are still a couple of games where you can see that Libertad might leave a couple of points, especially the way that they're playing lately. But Cerro Porteño needs to keep on winning, and they look kind of tired, Roberto. That's what I saw from this team, especially on the second half when they needed to go all out. The game was dead on those last minutes. Nobody was pretty much attacking from Cerro Porteño's side. It was all Olimpia. Palermo got the right subs, and he ended up, I think, with the best image of his team. And he ended up pretty happy with what he got from pretty much every player that he put on the pitch. They even got the best opportunities, I think, to win it. But it was a tie, another Superclasico. We'll have to wait for the next one to see who wins it.
Yeah, and it'll be a while. We'll have to see if it's going to be coming from Libertad or Cerro Porteño as the champion, because as you said, there are a couple games left in the season as a whole. Fed, the Libertad have 5 more to play, so they have 1 game in hand. So in a way, this result even helps them even more. They got Tacuarembó, they have to play Ameliano, they have to play Nacional, General Caballero, and Olimpia. That's the remaining schedule for Libertad. For Cerro, they play Guarani, Tacuarembó, Luque, and Nacional. So in a way, Fede, I think this result, and again, we have to wait and see what happens because, seasons have always become weirder and, there's always results that go other way. But I don't see how Libertad can slip up again after what we saw against Cerro Porteño. I think that one was a big wake-up call for Ariel Galeano, and depending on what happens in the Copa Libertadores, what we're going to mention in a bit, it could allow them to really focus on more so of the league, and I think they understand that as a whole, whereas for Cerro Porteño, they're still trying to juggle 2 competitions. You mentioned the fatigue that this team has, and it's kind of a factor when it comes to dealing with playing multiple competitions. So I don't see how Libertad kind of slipped this out, don't you think? I feel like it is theirs to lose, as crazy as it sounds.
As of right now, I think it's going to be a battle that's going to come down to that last a week. It's going to come down to that last match, and it would be crazy, right? I mean, you just mentioned those games. I mean, Cerro Porteño going against Nacional. Let's remember that Cerro started the year off with Bernay being their coach, and Bernay is now coaching Nacional. So that would be quite a story, quite a way to end it. And on the other side, you're going to have Olimpia going up against Libertad. So Cerro's going to need a hand from their rival, the team that they clearly don't appreciate, and you don't think that Olimpia is going to give them a hand. You don't think that Olimpia is going to help them out on that last game. Well, that's something that's going to be talked about all over the place here. If it does come down to that last match, I mean, it's going to be a crazy week if that does end up happening. But I do think Cerro is very tired. I do think that Manolo needs to put younger players on this squad. He does have them on the team, but he's been using just the experienced players. I saw that rotation already from Libertad last week, and I do think they have the better calendar also. Ameliano is probably a team that can take points away from them. Nacional, like I just said, and Olimpia. I think those are the 3 big games out of the 5 that they still have to play to try to clinch another title. It would be 3 straight titles for Libertad, and if Cerro can pull it off, it would be almost a miracle, because it's been Libertad, the team that's been in the first spot almost all season long. They are the team that probably deserved it the most. But just like I said last week, Cerro Porteño has picked up their game. They've been playing better, Rob. They look like a championship team to me lately. I think they still have a very good opportunity to take it away from the Gumarelos.
They've been playing very well. Until this game, they'd won 7 in a row in the league, right? So they were really pushing Libertad. I don't know. I still feel what's happened, when we'll talk about it now, but what's happened this week with the Libertadores, it actually in a way is going to give Libertad more of a rest, whereas Cerro have this now huge game coming up. And you could see with the subs you were talking about in the Clásico, you could see that it was interesting, right? He brought on Iturbe, but he took off Cecilio. So he didn't want to play Iturbe and Cecilio together, knowing that he was going to use them in the game against Fluminense. Wilde Vieira came on very late, and then we saw he had this really important role yesterday against Fluminense. So he is trying to balance it, but like you were saying, he can't really expand his squad much more because he doesn't trust some of the younger players. And so it makes it very difficult to see, with Cerro having to concentrate on the Colo-Colo game, as we'll talk about, and Libertad maybe don't have to worry too much against Nacional. You can see Libertad can just maybe put that extra effort into the league to make sure they don't slip up, because that's all they need to do, right? And I was just thinking, it's funny, we have very interesting parallels to the Premier League race right now, with Libertad like this Manchester City with the money and they're so good and they keep winning. And then Cerro, maybe a bit like the Arsenal that needed their rival Olympia instead of Tottenham this time to win a game to try and help them. And they're having a good season, but they're just behind. So it's funny that we're getting those parallels. But I do agree with you. I do think we'll get to that last game of the season with two teams still in the race. So that's an exciting time because we haven't had that for a while. I think at least 4 or 5 seasons, I think, or 4 seasons back maybe, when Cerro went to Libertad and they had to try and win to take the title in what was an epic game.
It will be very much an ultimate end to a really competitive Apertura, and hopefully we get the same in the Copa Libertadores, because obviously, as you mentioned, we're kind of seeing those parallels in 2 competitions for 2 Paraguayan teams, still deciding some ties. Still deciding some places into the next round. We'll firstly talk about what happened last night at the Maracanã and kind of the result that, in a way, kind of favors Cerro because of the way that the groups are ending. So the day before, we saw Alianza Lima draw Colo-Colo 1-1, which put Colo-Colo with 5 points. Cerro Porteño obviously were with 5 points, but now they go into the game against Fluminense, where they almost took the lead. It was Marcelo that took the lead in the 14th minute. Then it was from Wilder Vieira in the 19th minute. And then it was Churin. It would have gave them a 2-1 lead, but it was called off for offside. And then it was Paulo Henrique Ganzo, getting the winner there for Fluminense, Ralph. So it's a result that I think was expected. And now Cerro Porteño are in the result or at least are in the position that they have to get a win against Colo-Colo, because Alianza have to travel to Fluminense on the final day. And it's a crazy result because, of course, you look at how they're level on everything. They're level on everything on this end. But the crazy part is there is the tiebreaker of the CONMEBOL ranking. So the ranking of how the teams are historically. Cerro Porteño are 19th, Colo-Colo are in 26th. So technically, if it goes into a draw, it could favor Cerro Porteño because of that CONMEBOL ranking. I mean, obviously they need to go in and get the results that they have to over there and get the win. I think it would boost their morale as a whole playing at home. But can you imagine being eliminated based on historical ranking? I don't think I've ever seen that in any competition.
Well, remember this year I was at the Women's Gold Cup in Houston, where Paraguay were playing, but we did actually have to have a coin toss for Costa Rica and the other teams that were tied, because it just came down to everything. So I got to witness firsthand a coin toss to decide who goes through. We won't get to that, like you were saying, because they have the other system with the rankings, and I think the goals scored away from home count. So if I was reading it correctly, I think if Cerro draw 0-0 with Colo-Colo, they'd be okay. But if it's a 1-1 or a 2-1 or a 3-1, any kind of score draw, then I think that favors Colo-Colo again. But going firstly to this game, to Fluminense, I mean, I was actually quite pleased with Cerro. I thought the way Manolo set it up was really interesting. I've seen Wilder Vieira play in this role where he tries to press high from midfield, but yesterday he was almost like supporting the lone striker Churin, and he was playing so high up. And the reason being, of course, Manolo studied the way Denise plays in Fluminense, and he was like, we need to high press and try and corner them in. This is going to be our best chance maybe of doing something, is really pushing them very high up. And I kind of like the way Cerro set up. It wasn't a defensive way of playing by any means, and that helped them get back into the game with the goal. They even went ahead, like you were saying. Churin, unfortunately, is offside. There's no kind of doubt about it. But I thought it was a good game, and remember that they couldn't afford to lose that game by a lot, or we wouldn't be able to talk about a 0-0 draw putting them through. They had to be careful about goal difference. They couldn't lose by more than 1 goal. So ultimately, I thought it was a good game from Cerro. I think, considering where they're playing, the opposition, it's just a shame to see. We talked about it already. The defense, like some of the similar problems. So if we just go to the first goal, Marcelo. I've never seen Marcelo score on his right foot, by the way. Like I was not expecting him to cut in and curl that ball in. But it's a mistake by Alan Benitez. Benitez, he kind of loses his positioning. He should have been a bit closer, and it gives him too much space. And of course, these players, world-class quality, they can hurt you. the second goal that Cerro concedes, really Morel, he struggles a bit in the air. That's why Morel's this kind of player that was always a central midfielder. Then he was used as a centre back. Now he's like always between the two positions. But the reason he was never came through as a centre back is because he was never that good in the air, and he gets caught out again with the goal. I think he's a very good delivery, but I think he should do a bit better and at least be challenging the attacker, right, and not be so far that you give them all. It's like not a free header, but it's like an almost free header because he's just a bit. He's like a step off, and so those kind of things from Cerro, and then we saw Baez obviously getting sent off, and with Baez it's the same thing that unfortunately you can't do much about. But his pace, he just sometimes the rhythm of those games. So we saw all of that creep in, and that really is where Cerro's weakness is, right? And I think what we saw from the positive was Manolo knowing his team, the team able to play an intensive game and pressing high, which if they can do that against Fluminense, if they start transferring that a bit more to the league, they could then be a very dangerous team in the league, thinking about the Clausura.
It's all going to come down to that Colo Colo game, guys. It was going to come down to that. And after the results this week, it's still going to come down to that huge game where I hope Cerro Porteño fans are there and supporting the team, not putting the pressure on the team. Hopefully that atmosphere helps them out because so far it's been pretty okay with Manolo Jimenez. I don't think a lot of people had huge expectations of passing the group stage after how the team started the season, but it's been looking better. And they get to this last game with the opportunity to seal it up at home. So I don't think it gets any better than this. You depend on yourself. The players got to show up, and it's win or directly go home. And yeah, you can win both situations. You can still win the Apertura. You can still go through in the group stage. So you can end up this first half of the year with a huge smile. Cerro still can do it, but they can also end up with absolutely nothing, and that would be heartbreaking, especially after what we've seen from this team. I mean, Ralph was just mentioning mistakes after mistakes, and this is something that we've seen ever since that first Colo Colo match. I mean, this team just keeps on making huge mistakes in very important matches, and certain players do not turn up. I mean, you can have an okay game, but you need to be perfect against the Brazilian teams. And Fluminense has not been the best Brazilian team in this Libertadores. I think there were even threats that the team got because of how bad they've been doing in the Brasileirão, not in the Libertadores. But the fans were saying this team does not look like the team from 2023. And the pressure was on them to win this game also. And Cerro Porteño, I think, was very smart about it. And the coach tried to refresh the team with the Colombian Rafael Carrascal instead of Jorge More, who's been playing a lot lately, and bringing in Wilder Vieira for Pachi Carrizo, which is, like Rob was saying, a more intense midfielder trying to also attack and try to getting in the box. And he was very important in that sense. I think the best player from Cerro Porteño in this game was Robert Pires da Mota again. And watch out for him, guys. I mean, he's been killing it this whole season. And I don't know if Garnero has been watching him lately, because there are a couple of midfielders that he's been taken from the local league, like Ernesto Caballero, for instance, who is a player that he knows very well from his Libertad days. But I wouldn't be surprised if he calls up Robert Pires da Mota with this level and what he's been bringing, especially in the continental stage with his team. So he's probably been one of the best players. But the problems have been in defense. You have options there. I mentioned Ronaldo de Jesus a couple of games ago. He hasn't gotten the opportunity. He's been sticking with Brock and Baez, and they just made two huge mistakes in these last couple of games. And you kind of seeing what you thought had already been fixed becoming a problem again, which is the defense for this team. So now they're going to have to fix it. They're going to have to make the changes because Baez is not going to be able to play the game against Colo Colo. So maybe Ronaldo de Jesus does get his opportunity in a huge game like this. He's going to play with the national team, also the Olympics. So it's good for him to get an opportunity in a huge game like this one. And hopefully he does end up turning out. And why not put in Gabriel Aguayo, guys? I mean, I did not see much from Iturbe in this game. And Cecilio looks kind of tired. He's the only one that can make a difference probably in an offense. So why not give more minutes to Gabriel Aguayo? He's been the shining star for Cerro Porteño. He showed up in the Superclasico. He was probably one of the best players from Cerro Porteño. I want to see him get an opportunity, get minutes against Colo Colo. He's deserved that opportunity, and he barely got to play against Fluminense.
I was about to say, Fede, not just minutes. Do you feel as if though he should start at this point, especially in a big game like this?
Well, so far he's stuck with the experienced players. I don't think he's gonna go against what he's done so far in a big game like this one. I think Iturbe is gonna start again. I think it's gonna be Iturbe and Cecilio unless something weird happens right before the Colo Colo match. But if it was up to me, uh, several games ago, it would have been Ronaldo de Jesus in defense and Gabriel Aguayo. You need those young players and you need that fresh stuff from them, especially when the team is playing pretty much every 3 days, traveling from Peru now to Brazil. You need them. And I don't know why Manolo hasn't used them. I think he's taking them way too slow, and they look like they're ready for the competition.
Yeah, I think especially Aguayo. Aguayo's been so exciting. Just wanted to touch on quickly Pires Tamote. He really celebrated his assist, right? Because he used to play for Flamengo. And he's been such a good player, as Fede mentioned. And he's a player that really, there were some things earlier in his career with contracts that messed up. And so that's why he never had the trajectory he could have had. I think he did play in Europe, right? He played in Turkey. But he maybe never got to that level because of some things that were kind of beyond his control. But he's from the same, he used to share a house with Derlis Gonzalez. He's from the exact same time as Derlis and Rubio knew. So that was a team that at the time managed by Chiqui Arce, we talk about a lot on the show, that built up some really good young players. And so he definitely has the possibility, I think, to talking about the Paraguay squad. And then just one last thing that came to mind as we're talking with Cerro at home, they have to win against a team. Back in 2016, they were in the same position. They played Independiente de Santa Fe. I remember this clearly because I went to the game. And Cerro got very lucky that day, but they did qualify because they played horribly. They played really badly. But Independiente de Santa Fe got 2 players sent off. They're down to 9 men for much of the game. And Cerro like scraped a 1-0 win. And I wonder if we end up seeing something like that against Colo Colo, just a really kind of scrappy game as both teams trying to find what they need to get through to the next round.
Well, I think that's what's necessary. I think in a position like this, they have to do what it takes to get all 3 points. Even if it's in like the last minute that we saw against Alianza a couple weeks ago. Even if it goes down to that, it won't be pretty. And certainly they're gonna have to improve on those aspects in whatever competition they qualify for the next round, if it's the Sudamericana or the Libertadores. So yeah, I think that's the main thing, as also the main thing for Libertad's case is to continue in a competition because they have been eliminated officially from the Copa Libertadores following the 2-0 loss to River Plate. It was a valiant effort from Alier Galeano's side, but it was not able to be. The Nacional win against Táchira allowed them to be in that spot for the Sudamericana, and yeah, kind of disappointing in a way. I thought they would have a better fight. Obviously, I think the result in the first game against Nacional kind of buoyed their chances. Obviously, not getting the results that they needed as well against Táchira over in San Cristobal also did not go the way as they should have. Ralph, going to you on this one, but final day, taking on Nacional, hosting them in a position where they can't go to the round of 16, but at least they can secure the Sudamericana. River Plate hosts Táchira, so that might be a foregone conclusion in a similar aspect to Fluminense hosting Alianza Lima. So really for both Paraguayan teams, they're in a position where they will most likely qualify to some competition, but it depends on which one. So I don't see in the positioning that both teams are in and also the games that are being played, I don't see how both these teams not play in an international competition next month or when the tournament restarts.
Yeah, but it's disappointing for Libertad because of the way they play. Remember, they won the treble, right? They won everything in Paraguay. They're the best team, and once again, they're failing at the continental level. Especially in Libertadores, we can talk about Sudamericana because I think they've reached semifinals and things, but they just they have this kind of mental block, right? I don't know what it is, but they're not quite finding it the right formula. And now I would say a lot of pressure will be on Ariel Galeano because he insisted in the Libertadores with, for example, this team, almost alternative team, and with Roque Santa Cruz starting and certain things. I know that going to River Plate and winning was very unlikely, of course, given the strength of the team. And then you see someone like Borja scoring twice, and you just think how good that player has been in this competition as well, not just in his local leagues, but he's been such a good player in Libertadores. And so, okay, that we can understand they can't compete with that, but then sitting back and after 6 games, looking that they will be third behind Nacional, I think they'll be disappointed with that. Of course, there's still the focus they need, right, to just ensure the Sudamericana spot. And then they could do something interesting because, like we talked about before, I think they've been semifinals. I'm thinking when they lost to Paranaense or Bragantino, they've had those runs, but I think for them they'd be very disappointed because really it's the Libertadores that they're wanting to do, and winning the competition, okay, is very difficult, but they want to be in quarterfinals. They must feel they're a top 10 team in South America, but they're not able to prove it.
Yeah, they needed something more, right? They didn't have enough football. I don't think the team actually was built up for a good Libertadores this year, right? After they missed Barbosa last year, after they couldn't keep him when a Brazilian team came to Paraguay to pick him up, they lost a very important player in defense, and they did not replace him at all. And it's been on Viera, it's been on Lucho Cardoso to try to do something in defense, but they've been having problems. They've been playing so many games, and they had mistakes there with Borja. You could see that they had problems getting the ball out of the box, and it was all River really the whole game. I mean, Libertad got 2 opportunities. I think it was just Roque who got a good shot at target, and then it was just all River possession. Libertad barely did anything. You got to take the good out of the bad situations, and maybe say that Rodrigo Morínigo, their new young goalkeeper, was able to get playing minutes because of Martin Silva's injury this season. Maybe that's a good thing. Lucas Sanabria also getting playing minutes in big games like this one in the international stage. That's a player that I think is just going to keep on growing. He had the opportunity to leave Libertad, but they asked him to stay. So they're going to build something probably around that midfielder also. But then you had players that, again, they weren't available for these big games. It happened to the Libertad last year. I'm talking about Antonio Barreiro. I'm talking about Lorenzo Melgarejo. These are players that you need in these kind of games, especially because of the way that Libertad tries to play with attacking, especially with the sides. They need to feed the center forwards, and he didn't have them. The coach did not have them for these big games. So I don't know what they're going to do going forward. I don't know if Galeano's situation depends if he ends up winning the Apertura to keep his job, or if Libertad are going to go again and try to pick up an experienced coach like they've done before, Roberto, because they aimed for a very young coach, and you can say now that after all these huge games that he had problems, that he didn't manage the games, he didn't manage the squad the right way, and especially he didn't have the players that he needed available, and the subs did not come in to make the difference. We thought that Libertad had a huge squad, that they had the depth, but when they needed it, they couldn't do it in the big games.
It almost feels like, they've gone too short, so far, but too short for their standards as well. And we're gonna have to see if they can do it in the final day against Nacional as we switch gears to the Sudamericana, because obviously we saw Nacional, Trinidense, and Sportivo Luqueño's dream of qualifying past the round over. But there's one team that are still alive, Fede. There's still one team alive, and that is Sportivo Almediano. They got the result against Rayo Zuliano over there, the Defensores, the other day. 1-0 win, thanks from a goal from Ivan Valdez. And now they travel all the way to Paranaense on the final day. They go to Curitiba. Danubio, the only team that is chasing them, take on Rayo Zuliano. I believe it's a 2-goal difference between both the two sides. Almediano has 10. Danubio has 7. So in a way, Almediano do need a draw. It's a big ask. It's a big ask from them to get a result from there, but it is possible for Almediano to get a result over there in Brazil. And yeah, to continue their dream alive in what would be a really big tournament for them.
Yeah, Emiliano has made it accustomed to, playing against the big teams, going into big stadiums and getting something out of those situations. They've done it here in the local league many times against Olimpia, especially, but also in other games. And hopefully they can do it against Paranaense. Just how big would it be, for their future, for their financial future also, because, they're aiming to have a new stadium. They're really investing in their club, and they look like a balanced squad right now because Sanabria, their coach, he's getting the best out of every player, and they pick up always the right players. I mean, Ivan Valdez, that was a signing at the beginning of the year of a player that was not playing that much in Argentina, but when we saw him last season around with Taquari, he was always showing up. He even got hot in a certain point and was scoring and scoring. He looks like he's back to that top shape now, playing for Emiliano. And look, these are players that probably didn't make it in a big team, but they're quite they're making a name for themselves in Emiliano. They'll be remembered for this campaign. Let's not forget that this is the first time Emiliano is getting an opportunity in the international stage, and to see Nacional melt down the way that they done, to see Luqueña be pretty much an embarrassment the whole competition, and to see themselves have an opportunity in this last game, and nobody else is talking about any other team than Emiliano. Emiliano fans should be really proud of what they're seeing from their team this season, Rob. Can they do it? It looks like a step too far from them, but hey, I'm rooting for this team. This is a humble team, and this is a small team that I want to see go through.
Yeah, it's been incredible, and it already financially they've made about $350,000, which for them is huge money. It would be like another 500,000, I think, if they can make it through to the playoff round or something like that. But they weren't given a favor by Paranaense. Paranaense losing at home to Danubia was really not what we expected, especially because they hadn't wrapped up the position just yet. In theory, now Emiliano, if they win, they could actually take the first spot instead of Paranaense, which unfortunately they're going to face a very motivated Brazilian team now, and I think it will be tough, and we've seen Zuliana have been so bad that unfortunately we can almost assume that Danubia will win that game and probably win it by enough goals. But that's not to take away anything, like we were saying, from Emiliano. And what's really interesting about this club is this is a club with no big history. This is a club that really was always in third division, sometimes intermediate, but mostly third division. And then it's had this resurgence, and then it started picking up this like culture of winning things because they keep beating Olimpia, which has become like almost a running joke because Olimpia just can't win against them. But they've won trophies. They got into the Sudamericana. They won the Super Cup, and now they're in the Sudamericana, and they've changed coach. So this is the interesting thing. It's not like a one coach thing. It's become a club culture of being able to do this. And that's such a big thing. If you think like, how do you build that in such a short time when for most of your over 100-year history, you just haven't been at the top table. So it's really impressive. And like we're saying, that it's a nice group of players, of these players who some of them are quite young, maybe on loan or were hoping to make it big. And like Fede says, others were ones that were in a big club, didn't quite make it, and they've all come together with this dream now of somehow getting into the next round of the Sudamericana.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there and see really what that kind of helps the Paraguayan teams in both the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana as we go into next week for that episode. But we wanted to close it out with a name that obviously has gotten a bunch of attention, at least from here in stateside for Alpha, and I'm sure Fede, you've been focusing it as well, is Matias Rojas. Matias Rojas has found some really great form at the minute, and he's only played, I believe, 3 games for Inter Miami. He comes in right when Diego Gomez getting that injury. Obviously we're still expecting on him returning, but in just the few games that he's played, he made his debut against the New England Revolution back on April 27th. He goes in and he didn't get the assist, but he helped win the ball for one of the goals. I think it was from Messi who scored. But then it was the game against the Red Bulls where he shined. 2 goals, a fabulous strike for his first ever goal, which I think was important for them, and doing it against a Paraguayan goalkeeper as well, national team goalkeeper, possibly the starter, Carlos Coronel. They got the 6-2 win. And then it was the one against Montreal where, you know, he obviously got the assist for I think it was Kremaski that got the goal as well, but it was the free kick. It was when Messi, you know, famously was on the touchline because of the protocol of a foul, and he was out there complaining about the rules. And right when he was about to complain, because obviously he's the main free kick taker, who goes and does it? Matias Rojas with a stunning strike past the Montreal goalkeeper. So in 3 games, Ralph, 3 goals, 1 assist. Sorry, 4 games, three goals, 1 assist. So it's been a wonderful start for him under Tata Martino's side, and he's kind of become a like for like replacement. I think a bit more offensive than Diego Gomez. But now the big question is what happens to him moving forward when Diego comes in, and also what this means for the setup. I love Fede's thoughts on where this would mean for his possible position in the Paraguay squad for the 3 upcoming games in the first of all the friendlies and the Copa America.
Yeah, firstly, he's just come in and had no problems with adaptation. If you remember Diego Gomez, it was actually very hard for him. For Gomez, it was of course his first time abroad, and he was without his family for a while because of some visa things, and so he would really struggle to kind of find his feet. Whereas for Rojas, it's been like, whoa, let's just go in, and he's had no problem. Interestingly, right, he's not intimidated with the players around him. He's actually using that to build him up. I think he's enjoying playing with Suarez and Busquets and Messi, of course. And I don't think the plan was for him to play as much, but partly the Gomez injury, and also the fact that he's playing so well, he's like forcing his way into this team. And now it makes you think about the national team, right? Because he's a player that has been on the fringe, I would say, chances at times, and then he's been left out or not used as a starter. And now suddenly he's making people think about him again. We know his quality is there. That free kick he scored, I was looking back at some old tweets. I mean, like 2015 for Cerro against Luqueño, he scores a similar free kick when he must have been just a teenager. So he's been doing this for a long time, and he's got such quality, and now he's putting some consistency with that, because that's always been his thing, right? Can he really keep this going, this kind of run and form? And now he's starting to do it. So it's looking very promising for Matias Rojas and for Paraguay.
Yeah, first of all, we got to give thanks and prayers to Tata Martino, right? For always looking into our Paraguayans. First it was Diego Gomez, now it was picking up Matias Rojas from this situation that he had with the Brazilian team when they were not paying him. And he had a couple of months, I believe, to get ready for this challenge also, because there were talks that he was going to be signed. And then we saw him at a practice. He hadn't signed yet, but he was already practicing with the team. He was already getting ready for these kind of moments. So I think he had that preparation. And that's the difference with Diego Gomez. He went straight to Miami and they needed him to play, right? And I think that's always key. And he's so more mature. He's way more mature than Diego. Also, he's 28 years old. He's been through it. He was a star in Racing. He went to Brazil, and they wanted him to be the star of the team. He quite didn't make it there. Maybe back to his best level, his best shape. But I thought Matias Rojas was gonna end up playing in Europe. When I heard that he was going to the MLS, I got kind of worried that I don't, is he going to be the star of the team? Is Messi just going to outshine everybody like he's done so far? And it was the best opportunity Messi could have had. The new rule, Messi being out there, being frustrated, being angry, and him taking over. Now, Messi, you're going to have to give up a couple of free kicks also to Matias Rojas. You're going to have to give a couple of free kicks to the Paraguayan, because he's showing that he has the stuff. He's showing that he can be the perfect complement for the team. And this is something that Messi also needed, right? Somebody that he could pass the ball to and that he can give him back. That's why they brought Luis Suarez. That's why they brought all these South Americans to Miami. So Messi can feel comfortable with the players that he's playing around. And I think Mati is so ready to have fun with all these players. He's going to get so much out of this experience. And hopefully he can take that to the national team. He's playing in all these fields where the Copa America will be played. So he's getting that game time and the experience. He looks like a player that can do something alongside Diego Gomez. I'm hoping for a great Copa America from these two guys, because they're playing their hearts out right now, Roberto, and they're looking like two out of the probably best Paraguayan players that we have playing in the MLS right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players playing there as well that are trying to also win their spots. Obviously we saw Cubas in Vancouver, Ojeda at Real Salt Lake. There's obviously some players that are still in the mix. So obviously we're gonna have to wait and see right before Garnetto announces his squad. We're gonna have to see who's gonna make that mix, who's gonna go in that team, who's gonna impress in the friendlies, because there's 3 friendlies that obviously Paraguay have to play beforehand. It's a good test to see what Garnetto can work with beforehand against Peru, Panama, and Chile. And then the tournament starts, right? 1 month away, guys, from it. Can you believe it? We're right there. And we're going to obviously give you all the coverage towards that and other tournaments happening involving Paraguayan football as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.